Good evening, everyone. My name is Adrienne Byers. I'm a past president of Black Women Lawyers Association of Los Angeles and member of Mu Lambda Omega chapter, Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. I'll be your moderator this evening. As we go along, please submit any questions in the Q&A section of the webinar, and we'll get to those a little bit later. Thank you for joining us. I don't have to tell you what kind of challenging year this has been. One of the bright spots, however, is the huge surge in interest in politics. Everything from voting rights to the recent historic collection to seeking elected office. People have a great interest in doing that. And now we have an opportunity to reach out to our communities and provide resources, guidance, and advice to make sure our interests are addressed on local, county, state, and national platforms. This panel and our fabulous co-sponsors are well equipped to assist us with that. Of course, as Alpha Kappa Alpha Incorporated is a nonpartisan organization and we don't endorse political candidates for office, but our collective here tonight, featuring 3 members of the Divine Nine, is hopefully just the beginning of a unified front of community service-fueled organizations and critical small businesses to make sure our voices are heard. That being said, I'd like to introduce the president of Mu Lambda Omega chapter, Akilah Wallace, to tell you a little bit about our chapter.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Adrienne, for that wonderful introduction. My name is Akilah Wallace. I am the president of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, Mu Lambda Omega chapter. Mu Lambda Omega has been around for over 40 years, serving the community of Culver City, West LA, community at large. We are really happy to host this event tonight in association with our partners and our other sponsors. As this is a very important topic, we absolutely have to keep the conversation going. We've got a lot of important things to do in our community, and we're looking forward to the discussion tonight. So thank you all for joining us. Very happy to be here.
Thank you. Next, we have Michelle Casati, who's also a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated and president of Black Women Lawyers Association of Los Angeles, who's also a co-sponsor in this event.
Everyone, my name is Michelle Casati. I'm the president of Black Women Lawyers Association of Los Angeles Incorporated. I'm also a proud member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, Mu Lambda Omega chapter. On behalf of BWL, I want to say that it is an honor to co-sponsor this important and timely event tonight. A little bit about BWL for those who are not familiar with our organization. BWL was founded in 1975 by Congresswoman Yvonne Brathwaite Burke and Justice Vano Spencer, who was the first African-American woman to serve on the bench in California and the 3rd Black woman judge in the history of the United States. Today, almost 46 years later, BWL members are public and private sector attorneys, partners at top law firms, professors at top universities, bench officers in the Superior Court, as well as on the Court of Appeals. I'm very excited to be a part of this event tonight and to represent BWL in this event tonight, and very much looking forward to this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. Next, I'd like to welcome President Diana Stevens of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, Long Beach Alumni Chapter. And we truly appreciate our Divine Nine sister organizations co-sponsorship this evening.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Diana Stevens, president of the Long Beach Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. We are grateful for this collaborative opportunity and thankful that you have taken the time out of your day to join us. Delta Sigma Theta began its work in social action with the Women's Suffrage March in 1913 and continues to address issues that involve public policy. For almost 35 years, Long Beach Alumni has serviced cities within Los Angeles County that include Long Beach, Bellflower, Signal Hill, Lakewood, and Paramount, with a focus on the 5-point programmatic thrust of economic development, educational development, international awareness, physical and mental health, and of course, political awareness and involvement. Within our 5-point programmatic thrust, we offer programs that educate, enrich, and empower the community. After an election that divided the country and the continued assault on Black Americans, no one can deny that the work is not over. We are excited to move forward post-election in support of this panel discussion that promises to share information to encourage you to become politically aware and civically engaged. We hope you will enjoy this discussion, use it as a resource toward organizing members of your community and exercising the power in your voice to advocate for change.
Thank you, Diane. I appreciate it. And what would a discussion like this be without the Los Angeles African American Women Political Action Committee, or LAWPAC, with board member Ingrid Palmer?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Ingrid Palmer, and I'm the president of the Los Angeles African American Women PAC. The Los Angeles African American Women PAC, also known as LAWPAC, started in 1991. And our goal is to get Black women, African American women, right at the table of politics, not only as elected officials, but also as decision makers. Right now, what we do is we raise funds for candidates and ballot measures that positively affect the African American community and the community at large. We've sown into campaigns as early as the first campaign. Our first campaign donation was to Barbara Lee, all the way up into recent campaigns of Kamala Harris. While I know tonight is a nonpartisan event, we want everyone to go away tonight and with the attitude and the gratitude that their vote matters and that they stay engaged, not only in this election, but in all elections to come. I thank you again for the Mu Lambda Omega chapter inviting LAWPAC to be a part of this discussion tonight. And I look forward to us having many, many more. Thank you.
Thank you, Ingrid. And I will thank our last co-sponsor, Essawan Books, and our small business partner, Essawan Books in Leimert Park. I'm sure most of you know about. Co-owners James Fugate and Tom Hamilton opened the bookstore in the late 1980s, and it's grown to be a crown jewel in our very own Los Angeles community. Essawan means water over rocks in the Amharic language of Ethiopia. As water flows over rocks, so does knowledge flow over books. Ta-Nehisi Coates, one of the country's most preeminent public intellectuals, has called Essawan his favorite bookstore in the country. Essawan has hosted book signings for everyone from Bill Clinton to Barack Obama, and Essawan has also partnered over the years with Mu Lambda Omega chapter and Black Women Lawyers Association on events of political and cultural significance. James was even in a Joe Biden campaign ad as one of the diverse faces of voters. The store is recognized nationwide and is a real treasure. During the pandemic, they were flooded with support, and people just want to make sure that they were appreciated and supported and did not lose their business. So James Fugate, Tom Hamilton, thank you for your support of this event. We always look at you to be out there when it matters. Thank you. Inglewood City Councilwoman-elect Deon Falk will be sworn into office on December 8th, the public ceremonies on December 15th for District 4 in Inglewood. A longtime resident of Inglewood, Councilwoman-elect Falk will focus on ensuring families remain safe and healthy during COVID. She'll also focus on helping small businesses and maintaining city services during this challenging time. The Councilwoman-elect has an accomplished background in community service as an Inglewood School Board member, delegate to the California Democratic Party, and appointee to the LA County Department of Consumer Affairs Advisory Commission, to name just a few of her achievements. Deon, who's also a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, graduated from California State University, Dominguez Hills with a BA in economics and a minor in political science, and earned her law degree at the University of West Los Angeles. She works in communications and public engagement for the California Environmental Protection Agency, Department of Toxic Substances Control. She lives in Inglewood with her husband and 2 children. Next, we have Mr. Shannon Lawrence, founder of I Can Lead Foundation. He is a political consultant who spent the first part of his professional career as a political staffer for elected officials and labor organizations. Currently, he provides strategic consultation to individuals seeking to run for office and organizations empowering their communities through policy change through his foundation. Shannon is convinced that the vast majority of people that decide to run for office truly have a heart for the community they are seeking to represent and have a passion to serve. He also knows that campaigns are not as simple as filing papers or buying a bunch of lawn signs. Shannon has developed a comprehensive program which provides potential candidates basic campaign knowledge that will be applicable to them in a campaign at any level. He holds a degree in business administration from Alabama State University and is a member of Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated. Bria Rushing is our panelist. She's a board member of LawPac and founded her own firm, Rushing Consulting, a political consulting firm specializing in community organizing, issue advocacy, and political campaigns. Bria is also a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated and is here tonight representing LawPac as one of its board members. She grew up in Montgomery, Alabama, and graduated with a bachelor's degree in political science from Troy University. After college, Bria decided to move to LA to focus on a career in public service and politics. She is the deputy strategist for the African American Voter Registration, Education, and Participation Project. In 2018, Bria started Rushing Consulting, a political consulting firm focused on community engagement, coalition building, and political field campaigns. She also works communications for the Engineers and Architects Association. Thank you all for being here. We really greatly appreciate it. So the first question I have, I'd like to direct to Councilwoman-elect Falk. And in this year, Councilwoman, of the historic election of Senator Kamala Harris, people want to know, how do I do that? So we want to ask you, how did you do it? What is the roadmap that you took with your diverse background and experience to becoming elected as the next city council for Inglewood's District 4?
Thank you so much, Adrian. I just want to say I'm very happy to be here and participate in this conversation. And I'm happy to have so many people participating as well. So we're on the right track with these type of conversations. I would say that there is no secret formula. For me, I've just been engaged for over 15 years now. I mean, it started way back, like in 2000, I first got involved in a local issue happening in the city of Inglewood. And then I worked with Yvonne Brathwaite Burke's office, the Board of Supervisors, when she was at the Board of Supervisors at the time. And we ended up fighting for an issue that was happening in Inglewood. And then from there, I got involved and I got appointed to a commission for LA County. And then I just kind of stayed engaged. I eventually was elected to the assembly delegate for the 62nd district, and work with the Los Angeles County Democratic Party. I do a lot of volunteering. I participate with my sorority and with the Connections Committee. I also participate locally and just stay engaged with the city council members, with the local community groups happening. And it's just very important for somebody who's interested to really be considered for an elected position, to just stay engaged and to make sure that you're making a difference in your community. Because if you're not making a difference in your community, then it will be much harder for you to be seen by community members as somebody that can lead the community. So you have to be seen by the community as somebody who can lead the community.
But what's the importance of seeking lesser high profile positions in the community as you kind of build your reputation to move up to get greater awareness of people and have awareness of your work?
Right. That's a great question. It's important because you're learning the organizational skills. You're starting to connect with community members, like community members who are also seeking those same types of appointments. And so you're building your groundwork as far as laying your foundation, building your network, learning the different people involved in different groups and involved in different projects. And then you're also learning what community issues are happening and how to speak intelligently on them and who to speak to and who to support. And so I would say that that's probably the most important thing, is just to learn what you're doing, learn who to support, learn what projects to support, learn how to be involved, learn how to make sure that when you are involved, that people are aware that you're involved, and how to put your stamp on that project as well, so that people can see the genuineness of your participation and that you really want to be considered in a leadership role going forward. So I think that that's pretty important, and it just takes work. It takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of participation, volunteering. And I know that sometimes people don't have the time to engage at that level. But at the end of the day, if you really want to take on those type of roles, you have to set aside time to be able to participate and be engaged at that level to be taken seriously.
Okay. Or you can hire somebody like Shannon, who's a strategic consultant, and he can give you the step-by-step business of how to do it.
That's true. That's true. That's another way.
And Bria as well.
I endorse that message.
Let me ask you though, is it fair to say that not everyone is cut out for political office to be elected official? Is self-assessment part of the process you take people through?
For me, I would say that truthfully, it is a difficult task to be an elected official, because even though your heart is always in the right spot, you're always wanting to make sure that you're accommodating and you're working for the better good of the community. There's always a segment of the community that might take offense or might feel differently than the role you're playing. And that happens in every situation. So, and that small segment of people might have loud voices, and they might actually, prompt this huge campaign against you. And so if you don't have tough skin, and you're not solid in who you are as a person, and your who you want to be, and your commitment, your inner being, you have to make sure that you are confident in who you are in order to be able to withstand that type of scrutiny from different segments of the population. So it can be challenging, and you definitely have to have tough skin.
Shannon, what's been your experience in terms of creating a program to help assist people in their goal of becoming elected officials?
Well, I think, like you said in the intro, I think the vast majority of people do have a desire to want to serve and do want to lead in their own community. I think one thing to remember is that I don't think there is a single path to becoming an elected official. I think much like what Council Member-elect Falk said, you have to know who you are. And I think that's one of the most important things, is to know who you are, know where your values are, know what you stand for, And I'll give you an example. You have to know at every single level kind of what the job is. If you don't like children, you probably shouldn't run for school board, and just because a seat is open doesn't mean you should run. And I think one of the challenges for a lot of people, not a lot, but for enough, is that they run for seats perhaps for prestige, not really understanding the job. And so their campaign can never speak to the issues because the campaign becomes about them, and the campaign is not about the community, and it's not about the voter, and it's not about the constituents and the stakeholders in which you're seeking to represent. So that's one of the challenges.
Okay. So when someone comes to you with an interest, what is, I know it's not a cookie cutter path, but how do you help someone evaluate whether they're that person and then kind of guide them on the next path of what to do?
Well, I think one of the first things is asking, why do you want to run? Are you running for you? Or are you running for the people, right? And then the second thing, to be honest with you, is how much money do you think you could raise? Because the reality is that campaigns are not cheap. And I'm not saying every single campaign is expensive, but the reality is that you will either be asking for money or asking for votes. And if you're not asking and you have this opposition to just ask and to go out and talk to people, you're not going to be successful, because people don't want to, they may recognize your name, but that doesn't mean that they feel compelled to get out their bed or leave work or get on their lunch break or go to their mailbox and cast their vote for you. You have to be willing to engage people. And frankly, raising money is one of the first tests to be able to see if you have that ability to be able to campaign properly.
Okay. And how does one learn how to campaign properly?
Volunteer. So, when Councilmember-elect Falk is running for re-election, go volunteer for her re-election campaign. Get involved in local community groups. If you feel compelled to give to organizations like LawPac, do that. I think you have to be involved. And I think once you begin to get involved, you get to know the players, you get to know the people that help make decisions, you get to know the influencers, the power brokers. And those are going to be the folks that are going to help you, either because you're going to hire them or because they're going to volunteer and help you to win your election. But volunteering is such a huge part of it.
Can I add in also, Adrian, so important and relevant what Shannon said, that like what he said, if you don't like kids, you probably shouldn't be a school board member. So another thing, piggybacking off of that is very important. If you do want to run for an elected office, make sure that it's something that you love. Be involved in a subject matter that you feel comfortable with and that you really love. Because if you're not doing something you love, people, the community will know it. And so for me, I ran for school board. Our school district was failing. And in fact, it's in receivership. Well, I have two young kids. I have a 9-year-old and a 7-year-old. And so a lot of my friends in my city, they send their kids to private schools. And I just didn't really want to do that. I wanted to have options. So I decided to get involved, and I did. It's important to me. It's relevant. I have kids. It makes sense. And people, they supported me. And so that was how I got into the school district and how I got on the school board. And even now with city council, I love my city. It is like the best city in the world. I don't care what anybody says. The mayor and my colleagues have turned this city into one of the best cities in this nation. And I am so excited and so blessed to be able to have this opportunity. I love it. I love it. I can't wait to work and be a part of the change that's happening in this community. So again, get into something that you love and the community will follow you.
Okay, Bria, let me bring you into this and recognize you have a strong background in voter registration and coalition building. And LawPAC was created to encourage African American women across the country through, to be women candidates through issue forums, international workshops, candidate forums, I guess teaching women what we have to do to become candidates. Can you speak a little bit about to LawPAC's role and your role as board member in terms of helping women position themselves to run for political office?
Yes, so I'm a graduate of LawPi, which LawPAC created, and it's a 10-week program where Black women who want to run for office are able to learn about all facets of politics and how to run for office and do it well. And the beautiful thing about that is that they bring in community members who have run for office, who are currently holding positions in office, who, a treasurer, so you can learn how to spend money correctly and how to make sure you're not being taken advantage of. You're learning about how to run a campaign, messaging, how to present yourself. There are plenty of programs that that LawPAC does, as well as other organizations like Emerge and amazing organizations that you can be a part of and that you can sign up for if you want to learn how to run for office. Even the Congressional Black Caucus has classes for you to take. And Shannon is creating a program for people to take to learn how to run for office. So there are programs out there. LawPAC is available for anyone to join, and it's an amazing organization that you can be a part of. Something that we've recently done is a lot of us are volunteering to phone bank down south with the Georgia Senate races. We help pay for a bus in Philadelphia to help people get to the polls. So there are amazing organizations here in LA that are doing the work that you can be a part of so that you're not overwhelmed by everything. I really tell people to find something that you're passionate about and then find an organization that does that work. And then if you see holes in that, you possibly could start an organization or fill in that blank. But it's great to build coalitions with people who know what they're doing and know about the subject matter.
So as part of your consulting business, what advice would you give to people who want to be elected besides go to the 10-week program that you just mentioned?
So I want you to start with being a community advocate. So right now, I'd say there are 3 issues that you can do to get involved with that you can start building coalitions so that you can have support in your communities. So let's start with COVID-19. Right now we have the stay-at-home order. So it's like you taking the time to understand what's going on so that you can break it down to your community, whether that's you starting something on your social media where you're giving out information right now. And you can help small businesses in this way because the state of California just put up $500 million in grants for small businesses. So you can start by learning that information, learning how people apply, help businesses in your community. And that's a great way for when things get better and you want to run for office. Those people can donate to your future campaign. You're, again, building a coalition and you're getting your name out there and you're understanding the issues. You can start with also with economics, how I brought in the COVID-19 relief and then education. So for example, USC and UCLA have advisory boards to help navigate and try to understand what we can do to close the gaps when it comes to the education gaps because people aren't physically in school right now. So that's something that you can apply for to get on again. So it's all about finding your area and helping your community, as our future councilwoman has said, and as Shannon has said, you have to make sure you are involved in the community and people see your face.
Okay, let me just ask you quickly. You mentioned our small businesses, and again, we have ESSA1 as a co-sponsor. I'd like to ask everyone this question: how can we bring along and partner with our small businesses in our nation building track to make sure that they're involved, they're helping us, we're helping them, and that we've formed this kind of a closer alliance in our communities?
I think I'll just jump in. I know for me as the incoming city councilwoman, District 4, I plan on aligning myself with my small businesses and meeting with them regularly and hosting events with them so that the community can come out and support them, learn more about their businesses, and start to connect in that way. So that's my goal as the incoming city council member, is to really bring support to my small businesses and make sure that they are brought up on a bigger platform so that residents in Inglewood can know who they are and know how to support them.
Shannon, you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think one of the things too is that we have to be very conscious about actually patronizing our small businesses. I mean, and it really takes a deliberate effort. I remember when we first went into COVID, like I remember at one point being I was subconsciously conscious about only buying food from Black-owned restaurants. And a lot of it is because I got a chance to actually enjoy it because I could bring it home. But the other part was I really was consciously like, I want some fried fish. I can either go to the local fish market or I can go to M&M's or Harold and Bell's. And it was worth spending a little bit of extra money and worth the little extra drive in order to make sure that the people that traditionally support my community, that I'm supporting them, frankly, when we don't know what's going to happen in the, in the world. The other part that I think that we have to do if we really care about them is we have to advocate, right? So whether it be Los Angeles or Inglewood, and so council member, I'm gonna just use you as an example if I can. If there's a business that you care about that's in your district and you live in the council member's district, don't be afraid to send an email or make a phone call or write a letter saying, hey, you guys are going to be taking up funding to support these businesses. We want to make sure you keep Shannon's Fish Market on your list. Keep them we like them in the community. Mm-hmm. Elected officials need to hear from their constituents what the constituents want, because otherwise they're going to hear from somebody. And so it's either going to be you or it's going to be somebody who may not necessarily have the same values and beliefs that you do.
Rhea?
I'll say this. One thing that I've seen a lot of fraternity and sororities do is have it where they highlight Black businesses on their social media pages, where you can patronize and use hashtags to show that you're supporting. That's a great way. It'd be great if we could see some elected officials have have virtual events where they're highlighting Black businesses and showing Black businesses in the community and how you can support. Right now, the great thing is that there's no excuse for events because of the fact that you can do them virtually and anyone can show up and you can do it from anywhere. So just making sure that you're creating events for these businesses, that you're showing them that you care, and that you can have like an event where you're watching a movie online with everyone and they can buy from a different Black business. There are just all these things that you can do where you really can support Black businesses in your community.
Let me ask, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, one of the things that I have seen to Brea's example is Tasha Serta, who's the mayor of Gardena. She actually on her Facebook page will like go live. Like she'll be like, I'm about to eat at this fabulous restaurant in Gardena, and I just want you to know all about them. Here are the people that work here. I mean, and it's, it's nothing professional, but it's one of those things where, one, it does two things. One, it lets the local business know, hey, they care. And two, you kind of just validated that business is worth supporting. And so to Brea's point, I think when we edify our own, when we highlight our own, it makes a difference.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Councilwoman-elect, speaking of communities, and our cities are undergoing change as we speak. Inglewood, Los Angeles, there's diversity in population, interest, and culture. How do we amplify our voices in changing cities and counties throughout the state and continue nation building in diverse communities that around shared goals and policies? How do we do that?
Right.
We want our voices amplified.
That's a great question. I will tell you that Inglewood is a great city and it is one of the fastest changing cities. Most cities just have maybe a changing neighborhood. Inglewood has a whole changing city. And so it is, in the last 4 years, it has changed significantly with diversifying the demographics. And so it's caused a concern for some of the communities that's been here a very long time. And and it makes sense. And we want to make sure that they understand that the Inglewood leadership understands, and we're concerned about it as well. We want to support our community, our residents. We know that they've been here before all of the new economy has come in. So it's important for them to have a voice. And so for me, I think that's one of the things. It's going to be a listen and learning type of situation for me for the next, probably the first 30 days that I'm in office. I want to hear the concerns of the community. I want to see the changes that are happening that they're aware of. And I want to work to try and find a common ground that we can support them, that we can make sure that everybody comes along with the new economy in this community. One of the things that we can do is just make sure we enforce like local hiring, making sure that we have the construction projects that happen in the city of Inglewood, that we are hiring locally. We have PLAs in place, project labor agreements. And we have right now, we have a 40% project labor agreement across the board for Inglewood. I will tell you with the stadium, I think they only got up to maybe 30%, but it's going to be very important going forward that we make sure that we meet our maximum for the PLAs, for all the construction happening, that we make sure we hire within our city to support it so that our residents are able to afford the increasing rents happening in Inglewood. And so just for some of the folks on this call, that is another issue that's happening in Inglewood, is the rents have gone up significantly. And so our mayor and my colleagues have recently had to implement a permanent stable rent control so that we can make sure that the residents can continue to afford to live here. So that's at 5% max annually. But in addition to making sure we have a rent control ordinance in place at 5% annually, we do need to make sure that our residents have, good jobs that they can afford to live here. So it is, it's a lot to it. And so we have in place a lot of the pieces to make sure that we are supporting our residents locally. There's going to be more issues that come up, however, but I think that we have a good foundation with the local hiring and the rent control. So I think that we're doing a good job here in Inglewood. I really do. And I look forward to looking to find new resolutions to support our residents here in Inglewood. I really do. And so I'm always going to be a part of those listening conversations.
Bria, as a community organizer, you've probably dealt with diverse communities and diverse interests. How do you coalesce different factors into kind of a unified body to get a result, to get some results?
Well, first off, it takes bringing everyone to the table, and how we talked about the importance of having a stake in the community. People aren't going to listen to you unless you're there and they know that you're there. And then making sure that you have a plan in place and that you're not speaking to everyone and making sure that you're speaking to everyone, making sure everyone's voices are heard. And then you're also finding like a middle ground. So not telling everyone what they want to hear, but giving the comment, like, what's going to happen, what we need to do, and building from there. So it really takes planning. You can't just say that you're gonna go out there and then fix all the issues in Los Angeles, especially in communities of color where you see us getting displaced, because the economic growth is great, but we have to talk about how in lower income areas, when you bring in new housing and all of these amazing, beautiful projects, it does push out people of color. So how do we fix that? Having conversations, roundtables about that, making sure that we're bringing everyone to the table, making sure that people in those communities are at the seat when we're having these discussions and not talking about them without having them there. So it really takes you knowing your community. You have to know the policies that are currently in place, how you can make them better, and then going to your elected officials and having that plan ready for them. So when you come and you speak to them, they know that you mean business and they can have a conversation about what's going on. Because again, our with Councilwoman-elect Falk, she's going to have a lot of issues. There are going to be people from every facet coming to bring their issues to the table. You coming and already having papers in place with what you want fixed makes it so much easier for you to have a stake at the table.
Mhm.
Shannon, as a political staffer, I'm sure that you experienced this too, having worked for officials that have diverse constituents. How did you see that being successful in terms of trying to make sure that all of the diverse voices are heard and issues are addressed?
So, I think one of the things that you have to know is that when you work for an elected official, you really are the elected official to a lot of people. And, I think one of the best ways that I think about how to answer that question is when Paul was talking to the Galatians and he said to them, when I'm with the Jews, I act as if I'm with the Jew. I act as if I'm a Jew. When I'm with the Gentiles, I act as if I'm a Gentile. But the principle behind that, and I think is very applicable in politics, is you have to be respectful of where people are, be respectful of why they are where they are, and you have to be respectful of how to get them to where you need them to be. And one of the first things that you do is that you have to listen, you have to be empathetic, and then you have to also stand firm in what you believe in. And I think the first thing is to be respectful of the people and where they are, their positions, and understand how they got to where they are, because that's the only way you're going to be able to get them to where you need them to be, especially on really tough policy issues. If you go in, guns blazing, and they're going to come to you guns blazing, trust me, because you're the elected official or you're the representative. But you have to be sensitive to that. You have to be empathetic to them in order for them to even begin to receive what you have to give them to help them make their life better.
Okay. Well, I definitely want to keep the enthusiasm going after this election. How do we get the message out that every election counts, not just the national big ticket ones like this historic election, but even the local and statewide where, they kind of have a ballot or two or a proposition or two or things that people don't necessarily come out. How do we emphasize more people that every election matters because you care who's on the LA, community college board, or you care certain things that will affect your life, maybe not the governor or, a city council person, but there are other types of municipal elections where things will affect your life. How do we get that message across to people?
Well,
Go ahead, Shannon. I'm sorry.
No, please.
No, I was just going to say it's so important. I think that's a great question because even on this election, this last recent election, Proposition 16 was on there. And that was to bring back affirmative action where minorities, specifically African Americans, has suffered, and the percentage of students that's been able to get accepted into like the UC system. And so it has been detrimental to our race. And so, that was one of the most important propositions on the ballot and it did not pass, and it's unfortunate, but we just need to make sure that our community, our black and brown community understands the importance of going and participating in every election that we do not participate in and do not get through important legislation is another win for the other side. And that's going to be, it's just going to continue to put us back as a people. But Shannon, go ahead. Sorry to cut you off.
No, not at all. I'll just say this. I think one of the things that people have to understand also is that the elected official, especially at a local level, they have a lot more power and influence than what people think, right? For instance, your council member can determine whether or not there's a red curb in front of your house or not. Mm-hmm. I mean, you know, your council member can determines who's going to be on commissions. And what people don't realize, and so it's interesting, right? Because I'm gonna give you a little inside baseball on process and policy, right? Is you go to a council meeting and it always seems like, well, they must talk to each other. They already got their mind made up, because the votes will often come up and down and there's often not a whole lot of in-depth discussion. Well, the reason why is because those policy discussions are happening either at the commission level, which your council members and mayor appoint, or they're happening at the committee level that you don't show up to anyway. And so if you really want to have influence, it's yes, go to the council meeting, speak a public comment, but where the rubber hits the road on real policy issues is in the meeting before the meeting. And that's often either in a committee or at a commission meeting, which you could be appointed to if you volunteer and do all that stuff that we talked about ahead of time, because the council member has to know you and they got to know they could trust you. But that's how you get involved, and that's how you begin to influence those decisions.
And those are open meetings, open to the public, Brown
Yep.
Act. Okay.
They will post this 72 hours prior to that meeting happening, or else it is an illegal meeting.
That's right.
And then just to piggyback real quick off of what Shannon said, he's absolutely right. That is an opportunity to get appointed to a commission. However, if you haven't been involved in the community, if you haven't volunteered, if you haven't participated and made yourself known, then how will city council members be able to know who you are to appoint you? So that goes back to our original conversations, to be involved, be active, be engaged, because those are the people that stand out and make themselves more appointable by city council members when that time comes.
Councilwoman-elect, how did you get appointed by Supervisor Burke? How did you?
So when what I said is I was engaged in an issue that was happening in her district, in the 2nd district, and it involved a lot of organizing and just communication, participation at local meetings, metro meetings and stuff like that. And I communicated with her a lot, her office. And so we won the issue. She knew who I was engaged. And then I asked her, that I let her know that I want to continue to stay engaged. And so then after a while, that opportunity came up to get appointed for her commission, and I took advantage of it. So she wouldn't have known who I was from, the next sister next to me, unless she had seen me really engaged and volunteering a lot of time to work for our community and get something implemented. And so that's how it happens. That's the magic secret right there.
So, I was going to ask you, go ahead. Mm-hmm.
Just to add to that, we talk about community building and creating a coalition. So a lot of people work. A lot of these meetings are during the day, and it can be hard to make sure that you're there. So have a group of people, have someone that can be there out of the group of people who have the same mission and same passions as you. Maybe it's someone who's retired. Maybe it's someone who works from home. But you have the ability to create groups of people to be able to do so. Make sure every elected official has a newsletter. sign up for those newsletters. Make sure that you're following them on social media. Usually they post those events. They post things about local businesses. They post things about, and that's also a way for you to get your business promoted, is by connecting with them and trying to get on their newsletters. There's a lot that you can do to make sure that you're getting that information, because I do understand that, again, people work, people are busy, and that it's hard to keep up with all facets of government.
Right. So let me ask you, how do we improve our success rate in reaching discrete voting blocks like seniors, or now that Prop 17 has restored the right to vote for felons? I mean, who's targeting and reaching out to them? How do we encourage participation, targeting, maybe making articles in the AARP, or, making concerted efforts to inform people who formerly were not able to vote, now that these are the issues that you need to know so that we can give you information? How do we go after those discrete voting blocks?
So we have this great database called PDI. And the beautiful thing about that is that it gives you the demographics for whatever area you're in. And I saw, as an attendee, Shakiri Byerly. I'm sorry I butchered your name, but I love you. But she's a data person. Make sure you invest in people like that. They're the people that do the data, have the data, and have that information so that you can reach those vulnerable populations. I feel like our community needs more money in think tanks and more money in organizations that invest in creating the data for us to be able to know where to go to hit those vulnerable populations. But the information is available. It's just making sure that we have the resources to get that information out to the right groups and organizations.
Okay.
And the other part to that is that I think there are two groups of people, both the felons who are now who will be able to vote, but also 17-year-olds. And most of us know someone who's either 17 or is will be able to vote because of a prior felony. You don't have to wait for those groups to reach out to them. You know them. Mm-hmm. I mean, simple as you know them. Now's the time. Look, little Michelle, come on over here. Let me show you how to register to vote. I know you're a junior in high school, but now's the time. And because it is really incumbent upon us, right? If we're waiting on those groups to do the work for us, we will be waiting for those groups to do the work for us. Those groups should be there targeting the people that the people on this Zoom call cannot talk to. Those are the people that are really in the shadows, not the people that are in our own homes. We should not be waiting on them to talk to the people in our own homes.
So shouldn't it be good? Oh, go ahead, Councilman.
I was just going to chime in that for me, I will tell you that I'm a little bit old school in this respect, in that for me, I like to be connected to my senior community. I like to be engaged with them. Seniors are very active voters, and they're very engaged. They have nothing but time. So when I tell you, if there's an issue, they will let you know, and they will stay on top of you until it's done. They will do it. And so I enjoy working with them. They're passionate about their issues. They have time to advocate for themselves. And so, you just have to find ways to connect with them where they're at. They're not on social media for the most part. They're not in the new progressive communication means of communicating for most people. You have to get back to ground zero with them and meet them where they're at. And so that's important. Me as an elected, I have no problem. I love it. I'm willing to meet them and go to their events and make sure that I connect with them in an arena, a venue that's comfortable for them. So, you have your progressive way of communicating with different groups, but then sometimes you got to think about it. Sometimes you just have to go back to ground zero and think about it and do it the more original way. So.
How important would it be at this juncture? I don't know how long COVID's going to last, but a lot of schools are virtual, and as Shannon said, we need to start young, and maybe we start indoctrinating junior high school or high school students into what the process is with voting and all of the issues that they saw, this election. I don't know if there's still civics classes, in school. I'm dating myself, but how do these young people know about, okay, I got a ballot here, who do I vote for? How do I find out this information?
I will tell you, let me jump in real quick. It's so interesting. Ever since we've had our first African-American president, our little black and brown kids know who the president are, and they knew all about Donald Trump and his antics for the last 4 years too. So when we were blessed to have a new incoming president-elect and vice president-elect to get us out of the antics that's been happening over the last 4 years, not only were adults celebrating, our children are celebrating. They're very happy. They're engaged. They pay attention to what their parents are saying, and they hear what the news is saying. So I think that's important, Adrian, is for us to definitely start getting our kids more engaged in so many areas so we can prepare them for the future, and not just in politics, financially, home ownership. There's so many areas that, that it's just important for them to make sure that they're up to speed with some of our other populations that are more advanced. And we got to get there with our kids, but politics is one of them.
Rhea, did you have any thoughts on that?
I was going to say, I think that like Gen Z and below, they are not playing any games when it comes to making demands and demanding that they have a seat at the table, whether it's being on TikTok and buying up or just irritating people, but making sure that their voices are heard on social media platforms. I think that now information is so accessible that there should be no problem with them making sure they have all the tools that they need to be successful. Now, what I do love about, again, with our sororities and fraternities, a lot of our members are teachers. And we have a really great opportunity to create plans to make sure that the students are civically involved, are civically engaged and involved. I remember I partnered with the Inglewood Delta Sigma Theta chapter and talked to students about how they can get involved in my story. And just reaching out in your community is a great way to reach out to young people. Like have a vehicle where you're taking kids to the polls. Make sure that your kids are taking their friends to the polls, and you can do that with vulnerable populations as well. It's really about you doing what you can at home and starting with like the people that you can touch. And if everybody's doing that, that's how you see a movement happen.
Right.
Let me ask you all the panelists this question. We're talking about awareness of election issues and what we've just kind of gone through, which is phenomenal. But out of California, there were significant and still are significant things happening in other states. The Georgia Senate race, for example, there were a couple other races, South Carolina, that were just critical. What do we do besides sit here and say, this is, that's in another state? What can we do? How do we get involved? Because what's happening in Georgia is critical, and the eyes of the country are on that election. What do we do about making sure that we know enough to cross jurisdictional boundaries, that we don't just say, oh, I voted in California, but how do I get involved in what's happening in Virginia or another state that's critical to me? What are some of those strategies?
So I think one is give money. $5 will go a long way to a campaign. It just does. Believe it or not, it's that multiplier effect is just amazing. The other thing is that, what COVID has done is it has allowed all of these new political technologies to become refined and people to become mastered at it. So for instance, one of the things that I did during this last election was I did a Zoom party discussing the ballot with friends and family, right? And anybody anywhere in the world could have jumped on the Zoom if they wanted to know what was happening in California politics. Who's to say we can't jump on a Zoom with our friends in Atlanta or in Fayetteville or wherever in Georgia and say, hey, cousin, You know, I'm in California, but this is still really passionate to me. Let me tell you why, right? And you could do something really, really cool and modern and fun like that. But I mean, I think that's one of the first things that you can do. I'm sure the council member and Bria have some ideas as well.
The New Georgia Project, as well as Fair Fight, which was started by Stacey Abrams. Those are both organizations that are paying for phone bankers. I think a lot of people want to volunteer, and they have plenty of volunteers right now. The issue is that they want to make sure that they're paying people in Georgia to talk to people in Georgia. Because it's good when, especially because we're depending on Black voters in this election, Black Georgians need to talk to Black Georgians about getting out to vote. And so it's so important to donate to organizations that are doing that work and that are physically on the ground in that state.
And then for me, I would just say, I would echo what Shannon and Bria said. And in addition, I would just kind of go back to a conversation that we had earlier in the evening about just kind of educating voters on how important their vote is for this runoff election. What does that mean? Like, so you have people that are in a position to be able to make a difference with the number of senators that are in Georgia. And that can be the deciding factor for a whole lot of economical issues that would impact residents nationwide, as far as, you know, Social Security, covered California, just healthcare, education, you name it. And so it's just very important. And then there's probably a lot of them don't even really realize that if we have that 50-50 split, that our vice president would be the deciding vote. And so if we can get there and make them understand and educate them as to why it is important for them to get out and vote in that runoff election, I think that could be half the battle of winning those 2 seats.
Right, and also to piggyback on that and talk about why education is so important, we have to understand, what does the U.S. Senate do, right? A couple of the most important things that the U.S. Senate does is they get to vote and approve every single presidential secretary. They approve every single presidential recommendation for federal judge. They approve every single presidential recommendation for Supreme Court judge. And those judgeships alone have so much influence in their lifetime appointments. And as we've seen over the last 4 years, the current administration took full advantage of that appointment power they appointed over 200 federal judges to lifetime appointments, many of them under 45 years old.
And unqualified.
Exactly.
And not one African American. That makes a difference when it comes down to how the federal law is carried out in your state, where you live, in your community. That makes a difference. And frankly, our children honestly need to understand that. Like, they need to and it's incredible. Like, when I have a 13-year-old daughter, and one of the first things that she said was, now that Joe Biden is going to be president, does that mean we can get rid of Common Core? Because they hate Common Core. But she understands the correlation between president, secretary of education, education policy, and relieving my heartburn. She got that connection. And I think as long as we begin to have those conversations with our young people so that they understand who has the power, what that power is, how they can exercise it, and how they can influence it, then that's how we begin to make that systemic change.
A lot is at stake as well. We have the issues of COVID-19 and making sure that we get relief. We have healthcare. Over 14 million Americans lost healthcare in the past year, and we're in a pandemic. And if we don't have the votes, then we can't reform healthcare. I have an app that I use, and this is a great way to keep up with legislation that's being passed at the federal level. It's called Causes, and it used to be formally Countable. But if you put in your address, and it gives your senators as well as your representatives, and it shows you everything they vote on, every time they vote, every time they're in session. They give you updates about information, possible legislation that could be passed. But two, think about all the amazing things that we heard about in the House of Representatives that went through and that are sitting in the Senate that possibly will never get passed because we don't have a majority.
What's the vehicle to get this information out to people? I mean, there's people that I know that don't know, like, they don't know that the County of Los Angeles includes 18 or 88 incorporated cities. They don't know the difference if they're in the county or the city. They don't know who their state representative is. And it's no fault, but I mean, how do we increase people's awareness and knowledge of who's representing them so that they can get to those people and be more part of the process?
Mm-hmm. It's going to be ground zero. I mean, I think that a lot of these communities, you have people that are just making it day to day. They're trying to get to work. They're struggling to put food on the table, to keep a roof over their head, and to keep their job. And so in a lot of those type of situations, they don't have time to turn on the news and see what's going on. Sometimes there might be, an extended period of time before they even become aware of certain information or facts that's happening. So it's just going to be a matter of just connecting with them on the weekends. Even in COVID-19, knocking on the door, handing out a very simple to read literature piece, and just kind of getting to the specifics of why it's important for them to get to this runoff election coming up. And that's just going to be just literally at ground zero, just door to door is going to be very important.
The other parts of that is that we have to not be afraid to talk about politics in public. I think one of the things that we have come to believe, especially, and it's handcuffed our community in particular, is there's two things you don't talk about: religion and politics. And I get it; they're both controversial, they're both provocative, but for the political piece, the reality is that we have to not be afraid to talk about it, because guess what? Somebody is, otherwise you wouldn't have had 20% Black vote for Donald Trump, because somebody is talking about it and we're not, and whatever your political leaning is, it really doesn't matter. But the bottom line is that somebody's talking about it. And if you're not, then you can take for granted that someone who does not have your best interest is talking to the people who you should be talking to. The other part is that we have to engage, going back to the small businesses, we have to engage our small business people, because they're the folks who know our communities, because they know the people that spend money with them. And they have a lot of influence. They have a tremendous amount of influence. Your barbershop, your barbers in your barbershops have influence. Your beauty salon owners have influence. Your dry cleaners have influence. The servers at the local restaurant. I mean, all of these people have influence. And so the reality is that we have to be able to not be afraid to talk about those things with the people who talk to people for a living. And we got to just be honest about that and just be aggressive about it.
What about our faith-based organizations? How do they factor in developing a knowledge base and amplifying our community voices with respect to political office and important legislation and issues that affect us all?
I will just jump in here and just say that I've seen a real rise in community engagement from a lot of our religious sectors. They have political organizing groups within their sector, and they might do like campaign events where they highlight different propositions or highlight folks that are running for office to allow them a platform so that the residents can hear what their platform is and decide who they want to vote for. I've seen that a lot in LA County in general, and I think that that's great. And I think that more churches should engage at that level so that the community can hear from you, because at the end of the day, our churches are where we gather and they trust the information that come out of the churches. So if they're able to get their information from a religious event and have different propositions highlighted, and they're able to understand the importance of upcoming elections like a recall in Georgia, then I think that is where the difference is made, and that those more churches should be doing what some of them are doing in LA County for sure.
Maria, Shannon, any thoughts on that?
Oh, I actually love speaking at churches just because the diverse communities that they bring together and the wealth of knowledge that our community has in our churches. So speaking about ballot propositions, I've seen plenty of Black churches in LA have ballot proposition measures, like nights where they bring everyone together. They have food, you talk about ballot propositions, you talk about what's on the ballot, and you congregate together. And we need these spaces for our community. And even with COVID, they're still doing it virtually. So these spaces are important to our community and they're needed.
Shannon?
Yeah, I mean, ditto. I mean, I just think that the ecumenical community is critically important. And as we've seen, they will be on both sides of the issue. Right. so but I do think that for the churches that are in, I'll say this. I think sometimes for religious leaders, I think sometimes they may be presented with a conflict because of sometimes what the doctrine may say and then what the people say. And I think you have to be, not even a doctrine, sometimes what the denomination says, right? But I think, if there's an issue that you're passionate about, I think it's still critically important that you know yourself and you not be afraid to bring it to the pastor and to the church leadership to say, this is what I'm passionate about. And you may be able to actually move that pastor who just may not have known about that issue. And now you become the person educating them on it and educating them on that issue, and not necessarily people who may not have your best interest at heart. And so I keep going back to, if it's something that you are passionate about, you have to be able to talk about it, and you can't be afraid to do it.
Okay. So as we seek to help people who aspire now, have been encouraged and moved by the process this year to seek political office, how do we create a deeper bench for elected official hopefuls so that when one of our experienced legislator retires or is about to retire, there are potentials that are in the wings that have been vetted or at least have some visibility, as opposed to having an empty bench because the legislator didn't groom anybody to take his or her position, and then all of a sudden we're left with the void. How do we do that?
I will tell you that is so important because unfortunately, our folks, we're losing some seats. We lost the BOE seat, Board of Equalization. There's been a few seats that we've lost. And so it is very important for us to groom other folks that are interested in possibly running for office. But again, that takes initiative by people who actually want to run for office. And so I think that it's important for the folks on this Zoom meeting to understand that if they're serious about running for office, they have to be present. They have to get out, volunteer, participate, support, just like somebody running for a re-election or something like that, you have to make sure you're there and support, because if you want support when you run for office, people will support you. They're more likely to support you if they've seen you support them or support other initiatives that are important to the community. So, it's a give and take. You can't pop out, 30 days before the time to pull your papers and run and think that everybody's going to get behind you. You have to be on the battlefield all the time for the whole 4 years. You have to be out there and engaged.
Shannon?
Magic Johnson has a Major League Baseball championship ring, and he's never swung a bat, to my knowledge. It's not professionally. Why? Because he understood his position in winning the championship. And his position was to be the face and to be an owner and to be whatever he was to the organization. I think the very first thing that you asked, Adrian, was, and the answer was in terms of knowing yourself, right? Everyone absolutely has a right to run for office. And if you want to, you should. If you're going through that process, though, you also should be open, because in the volunteering process that you should be doing ahead of time, maybe working for an elected official, staffing an elected official, staffing a candidate, you might find that your role in winning the championship could be a great chief of staff, could be a great district director, could be a great commissioner. And even in that, you're still helping the elected official to win a championship for your community. Because like I said before, are you running for you, or are you running for your community? Are you running for the prestige? And I want to reiterate, if you have a desire to do it, you should absolutely do it. You should absolutely do it. But I also think that there's a lot of value and is needed in people who are playing those supporting roles as well. Because a council member elect, she's great as a council member, but if she doesn't have people that she could trust, that she can appoint to certain commissions, then it could stifle her ability to be a great council member. And so I think, but all of that comes out in the wash as you're doing the work and on that path to becoming a council member and all of that stuff. And you got to be open to it. So I just wanted to just kind of drop that out there too.
Okay. Bria?
Start out with something as basic as your neighborhood council. Make sure that you're, and then two, there's more than just being like an elected official when it comes to like city council and all these different types of representatives. We do have commissions and boards. There are water boards. There are all these boards that does not have the diversity that's needed and that directly affect our communities. So make sure that you're out there and you're figuring out what sector you really want to focus on that you can get a position with. Join your Democratic Party. I mean, your Dem clubs. That's a great way to learn about the landscape and to speak to people who have been in the game a long time. LawPAC, again, is a great organization to be a part of that has a pipeline to women who run for office. So there are plenty of ways for you to figure out where you fit in this whole grand scheme of things. And it's a process that you have to figure out. And your way isn't the same way as someone else's. So it's finding out what's best for you.
Okay. I'm going to ask a few questions that the audience has presented. And the first one is, how important are endorsements from major political parties if you are seeking office? How important is that? Is it the same as it used to be? Does it mean something different these days?
I'll take that question. I would say that it's very important. You definitely want to earn the endorsements of all of the political organizations that you want to have support you. and you need to put yourself in the position to be able to, gain that support. So you have to get out and participate. You have to be a member, like Bria was saying. Join the DEM club, participate, and then when you decide to do something, whether that's running for elected office or doing something else, then you've been around. They know who you are, and they're willing to more likely support you in a role, depending on the race. But, a lot of times they are more likely to support and endorse you. But yeah, it's very important to have the support of political organizations. It's more important to have the support of the residents who's going to vote for you. Like, that's the most important. But your candidacy for a race is justified a lot of times when you have major endorsements backing you.
Shannon or Bria?
And there are all types of organizations as well that you can get backing from. How we said the Democratic Party, you can do Dem clubs, your labor unions. That's another way for you to get really involved and to even go all the way up to running for office. Is starting off being like a unit council person or a steward for your local labor union. There are plenty of ways for you to do it. And if you're not going to have the backing of the establishment, you need to be in the trenches in the community where you have the support of the people there. There's a way to do it, outside of the establishment, but you have to be in the community, and people have to know who you are and know your face and trust you.
Thank you, LaChala Wilson from San Diego, for that question. The next question is from LaWanda Morris, and this is for Councilwoman-elect Falk. How do you plan to engage with Inglewood residents to hear their concerns, desires, after you become, after you become a sitting council person?
I will tell you that the first 30 days, I plan on doing a lot of listening and learning from residents. I'm looking at setting up some crucial meetings with some of the more active residents in the District 4 community, and having those conversations, having coffee and donuts with them, hearing what their concerns are, and starting from where Council Member Franklin left off. He was an excellent council member. He was in that seat for 18 years. He was very engaged and represented District 4 well. And so for me, I would like to hit the ground running and just kind of pick up with some of those other important issues. But that, for me, I'm going to do a listen and learn the first 30 days and kind of figure out where my residents are and what the most important issues are, and start working on them immediately.
Thank you. Denise Dowdy would like to know, where do the members of the Divine Nine come into play with respect to not being afraid to speak politics and hopefully becoming, getting the word about different important political and legislative issues out there?
I can speak to that. I know that all organizations are nonpartisan. So the beautiful thing that we can do is getting people out to vote, making sure they're registered, that they're informed, having forums where we bring together elected officials. And the thing is, we need to start partnering with more local chapters so that we can have more pull, making sure that we have talks about ballot propositions. There were like 13 ballot propositions. That's a lot of information for you to vote on top of you having to know all the candidates as well. So it's just making sure that you're informed. And a lot of us have committees that this is what they're focused on. And so it's just making sure that we stay involved and that we make sure that our community's voices are heard.
Mm-hmm.
And support your own. And honestly, you have to support. I mean, if you got members of the Divine Nine in any office, you have to support them in order to edify their voices. I mean, I think when Tom Bradley was mayor of Los Angeles, it was a whole lot of newps in elected office in California, and a lot of it was just because we were supporting our own, and everyone else got behind him. And I think we have to do the same thing. The same way when Keisha Lance Bottoms was being attacked in Atlanta, and the whole D9 all over the country was like, nah, we rocking with you, Keisha. We got you, right? The same way Kamala Harris was, I mean, when she was named vice president, it's like, oh, no, okay, Joe, we got you. And we have to do that for Steve Bradford, who's a Sigma in the Senate, for Dion Falk, who's in Inglewood. You know, I mean, we got to get behind our folks. For Mike Gibson, who's a new. I mean, we got to get behind these folks. And Jawan, I'm gonna do a roll call in a sec. But the bottom line is that the folks that are us, we got to support us. You know, Joseph Williams he's an alpha out in San Bernardino. He's here. I just want to make sure shouting you out, brother. But the bottom line is that we have to know where we are, support our own, and make sure that they continue to win, but then also hold them accountable. Like, hey, we got you here. What you doing? Who you appointing to the commission? You know, what are you supporting? And you got to hold them accountable to that, right? So.
Okay. Thank you. I'm sorry, Councilwoman, did you want to add something to that?
I was just going to point out, and this is just something very simple, but I just noticed in this last election cycle that a lot of the branding for the election was just vote. Very simple, vote. It wasn't vote for, Kamala Harris or vote for Trump or vote for Dion or whatever. It was simply vote. And so that message supported and allowed all the nonpartisan organizations to be able to just get behind it and kind of go off of that, build from that, just to vote, make sure that people are voting. They're able to have a ride to the polls, and they're informed with the ballot measures and everything. But it was just all geared towards education of voting. It wasn't really vote for Joe Biden, vote for Kamala Harris. It was just whatever you do, just vote. And so I like that. I noticed that this election cycle. I think it's important, and I hope that we do more of that, because I feel like that was really effective, just to encourage people to engage. Whoever you're going to vote for, okay, but just engage in the election process.
Okay. Atoy, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right. Atoy Wilson wants to know, and I think this is just a basic question. How do elected officials stay true to their agenda starting off without getting political?
I think that you have to know who you are, and you have to be a very strong person. I feel like for the most part, I've been an elected official for over 3 years now, and I feel that I've been able to stand firm in my beliefs and my commitment and who I am and what I believe in and what's important to me as an elected official. And I'm going to carry that into city council. I'm going to continue to fight for the community. I wasn't born rich. My parents struggled like a whole lot of other people. I know how important it is to make sure that our folks have jobs and that they're, that they have a good public school system, because not everybody can afford to send their kids to a private school. So important issues like that are the foundation of who I am, what I support. So I feel that, for me personally, as long as I continue to stay steadfast with who I am as a person and what I believe and work on those specific types of issues, then I should not have any challenges, and I feel that other elected officials should not either. But that's important, and that's something that people need to consider going into elected office. Are you a strong person? Do you have thick skin? And do you know who you are as a person? And do you want to make sure you're fighting for those issues? Because as you get deeper into this field, you are challenged, and you will have those crossroads where you got to decide, and you better know who you are as a person moving forward, or you're going to be challenged.
Rhea, let me ask you this, and going back to what we talked about, coalescing communities, different diverse communities, but we have to acknowledge that there are some rifts, some rifts between different communities of color. Latino, African American, Asian Pacific. How do you handle those differences and some disagreements or uh, adversity in trying to overcome those to bring people together with a common voice?
So, if we looked at Prop 16, and if you look at the demographics of who voted against that proposition, we can see that there's an issue here. Black people, we need help, and the other communities of color are looking at their agendas and they're not looking at coalition building with us. So I'm actually struggling with that answer. I think that we need to continue to support the Black elected the officials that we currently have in office. For example, Congresswoman Karen Bass has extreme ties to all coalitions in the community, and she's a person and a leader who can bring these coalitions and people together. But I see this being a huge problem in LA in the future, especially as our population dwindles with gentrification. And it's something that I hope that we continue to work on, but to say that right now, I don't really see an answer, and it is something that I'm worried about as well.
Okay. Any other comment on that one?
Yeah, I think honestly, you do have to hold people, you have to hold elected officials accountable, especially the ones who we elect. I mean, I remember a couple of years ago, there was in the state legislature, there was a measure or a bill in order to do kind of what Prop 16 was going to do, specifically for education, in terms of leveling the playing field for Black children. It didn't pass. And what bothered me personally about it was you had the Black caucus who was behind it at first, and then the Asian caucus, who was 1/3 of the size of the Black caucus, raised their voice and was like, well, this isn't fair to us. And they changed their mind. And I have a real problem with that, personally. I have a problem with that because I have children that should be able to go to any California school, but the reality is that they probably will face the same discrimination that I faced when I graduated high school 25 years ago. And that was strictly because of the color of my skin or the zip code of where my high school was located. And I think we have to empower our elected officials enough to where they can feel confident in standing strong against the political opposition of the establishment where they are, whether that be on a city council or in the state legislature or in the US Congress. And the only way that they do that is when we show up for them and we let them know we have your back. And the way you do that is by volunteering, is by working with them on policy, is by donating to their campaigns. Otherwise, they will listen to people who are talking to them.
Okay. I want to go back to our small business community for a minute, and we have a question from Andrea Hancock-Creer, who is our Mu Lambda Omega chapter incoming president. With respect to some Black businesses, is it fair to say that they could sometimes tend to view the conservative views as more pro-business, and would therefore be more prone to support a conservative candidate because they construe that candidate as a more pro-business candidate? Can we talk about that for a minute? Is that something that you've experienced as a widespread perception?
I don't know. I would say that I have not experienced that for myself. I think that for the most part, small businesses are, they just want support. And I wouldn't say that that's more from a conservative elected official, but I would say that they just want to make sure that whoever is their representative is supporting them. And so if if they see that support in their community and they see their businesses thriving because the elected has reached out and provided a platform for them to thrive, especially in a downturn economy, then I think that for the most part, they feel supported and they will support that candidate. And at the end of the day, I think that these small businesses are nonpartisan as far as their beliefs and who they're going to support. They want to support the candidates and the electeds who support them. So to me, I don't really see partisan politics playing a role as far as small business players. But I don't know if somebody else feels a little different.
So question, and I think we have to be clear about, are we talking about mom and pop small businesses or federally defined small businesses? Because a federally defined small business still could make $16,999,000 a year, be considered a small business. That's not your mom and pop, right? And so I think, you know, the local dry cleaners, probably not. But, you know, a business that's doing 10, 12, 15 million a year that's based in our community, they very well may line with the local chamber or the state chamber that may be taking a position on issues that go against the interests of our community, especially when it comes to criminal justice reform or tax reform or tax repeals for businesses. And so I think, you know, when it comes to that kind of stuff, then they do tend to be more, it would appear to be conservative just because of the policy positions of the greater body that they are a member of, but the individual owner may not be. But I also think that's where we have to know who those people are. And you can't be afraid when you see them at church to be like, hey, let me holler at you for a second. I know you're a member of this, but I saw that you guys are supporting this. Where do you stand on it? I mean, because either they're going to run away from you or they're going to tell you the truth, right? But the thing that's most important is that they know that you're watching. Because the last thing they want to do is lose money.
Right.
And can I just real quick piggyback off of what Shannon just said? I feel that small businesses have a very different interests than the larger businesses in the community. So your mom and pop, they're trying to survive, but the larger establishments, they're more than likely a franchise, a national franchise or something like that. So their interests are very different and they have a lot more employees. So they're looking at healthcare payments and unemployment insurance and all other types of issues, whereas your mom and pop is just trying to survive. So when you talk about mom and pops, I feel that those are nonpartisan types of businesses that, you know, they're going to support whoever supports them. But when you talk about a bigger business, then yes, you're getting into partisan politics. And yes, they're probably going to be more interested in working and supporting the more conservative elected officials. So thanks for bringing that out, Shannon.
Bria, really quickly, did you have any thoughts on that?
I feel like this is actually a topic that has been a little bit uncomfortable for people. And I think it's more so on the individual than like a small mom and pop business. You have seen a sect of people who are falling more towards the conservative side because they think that they can build generational wealth for themselves by not thinking about the collective and what people who are suffering are dealing with, but just thinking about the economic issues. And that's a problem for me. You have to connect both. You can build wealth for yourself and still be able to uplift those who are below you. That means like, you don't need, I mean, I know we need tax breaks and that's great, but like, we have to help our whole and uplift our whole community so that all of us can thrive and have the basic necessities in life. And so I do think that's a discussion that we need to have, especially with younger people who are getting into business and all they're thinking about is money, money, money. And they see policy that way. It's not nuanced like that. You have to think about the collective and the community as a whole.
You know, hey, but to Bria's point, though, one of the things that is encouraging when it comes down to young entrepreneurs that we are seeing is that especially a lot of Gen Zers, I mean, they do understand that they are attaching social causes to, you know, to their business, right? I mean, we even see it on Shark Tank a lot of times, you know, just as a gross example of it. But, you know, where, you know, a company may get a deal because 10% of profits goes to vets or goes to the environment or goes to school or whatever, something that they believe in. I mean, there's another PAC here in California where the owner, or not the owner, but the founder of it, is tied to some other millionaires. And frankly, they're like, we want to find something to spend our money on because we don't have children. We don't have anything to leave it to. And so God forbid I leave this earth tomorrow with my millions of dollars. I at least want to feel good while I have it today, right? And so, and I do think that that's indicative of the generation that's coming up behind us and how they think about economics and how they are tying it. Now we need to just expand that and have everyone think about it that way. But you do that by talking about that these are models that do work.
Okay. I'd like to wrap. Do we have one more question? I think if we have time for one more question.
Oh, Adrian, there's one thing I do want to bring up though, if we can, I think that's going to have a major impact on all of this, right? This past year, we filled out the census form.
Yeah.
And the census form will determine, it will determine how our lines for city councils, for school boards, for state legislative seats, for congressional seats, how they're going to be drawn and how the representation is going to happen, right? So I think that's the overlying thing. But one of the things that I would love to hear from the councilwoman-elect's perspective is for Black folk in particular, right? In Inglewood, you represent a district. We don't know what your district is going to look like after redistricting next year, right? So and I think one of the bigger challenges that we have is that we are not living in condensed communities like we once were. And that's going to have an impact on how these lines are being drawn to make sure we can have representation. So like, do you have any thoughts on that? Is our districts good for Black communities? Are just general elections better because we can kind of organize all over the city if we need to? What are your thoughts on that?
So that's a great question, Shannon. I will tell you, it's interesting because I've actually had experience running in the two different types of elections, the district election, as well as the open seat election. And so when I ran for school board and was elected, I actually ran in an open election and it was citywide. And so the downfall to that is it's much more expensive because you have to organize the whole city and all of your expenses are geared towards the population of the whole city. Whereas if you run district wide, it's like a fourth of the cost to run because you're going to tailor your campaign to just that district, the population of that district. So it's a lot less expensive running for a district. And so I will tell you this, just in the city of Inglewood alone, we have a growing population of Hispanics. And so whereas before it was a larger majority African Americans. So we are definitely, our demographics in Inglewood are changing. And so when you think about trying to make sure that we have representation in these seats, we might need to think about, figuring it might be better to have like an open election, citywide election, because then you're able to market to all of the people in the city that could possibly want to support you for a seat, versus if you're in one district, one section, and the majority there is maybe a group that's maybe more interested in supporting somebody else than you for a seat, that's going to be your challenge. And so with these districts, they can be challenging because guess what? They change, the demographics change, and my demographics are changing in my district. It's going to be very different from this election than it will be in 4 years. So I'm going to be challenged with that, with keeping my seat. So yeah, that is. I hope I answered your question, Shannon.
Yes. Well, panelists, thank you very much. We've got some questions pending that we will not be able to get to, but everyone is going to have access to your social media information and they can reach out to you that way. But Shannon, somebody did anonymously want to know what that button is. What is that button? What button are you wearing?
So it's my in honor of Kamala Harris, sorta.
Okay.
I'm paying tribute to Shirley Chisholm.
Oh,
Button.
nice.
I
Really,
just want to make sure that, you know, because if it weren't for Shirley,
yeah,
we wouldn't
that's
have Kamala.
Right.
exactly. All right. Well, listen, thank you, our panelists, Councilwoman-elect Dion Falk, Shannon Lawrence, Bria Rushing. It was very much a pleasure to meet you. I look forward to having this discussion and dialogue with you. This is only the first of many because, you know, we have a lot of work to do. Thank you so much for taking your time out this evening. Really appreciate it. Also want to give a big shout out and thank you to our co-sponsors, Black Women Lawyers Association of Los Angeles, LawPAC, Delta Sigma Theta, Sorority Incorporated, Long Beach Alumni Chapter, Alumni Chapter, I'm sorry, and Essawan Books for your sponsorship and your support and for just getting behind the unified front to talk about this very significant issue. Personally, I want to thank Buffany Hunter, who led the charge on this topic for our chapter, and for the excellent technical skills of Latasha Bright, Caroline Smith, Allison Sharp, all in the Tech Committee and Connection Committee from Mu Lambda Omega Chapter. Wanted to give a shout out to my friend Barry Thomas and my Delta mentor, E. Jean Gary, who let me bounce around some ideas on this webinar. On behalf of Mu Lambda Omega Chapter, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and please participate in our upcoming events. Also wanted to say good night to our president, Akilah Wallace from Mu Lambda Omega. Thank you from the East Coast time for joining us. Everyone have a good night and please stay safe.